So, welcome everybody. You are tuning in today to WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. And my special guest today, this is the second hour of our show, are Larina Warnock and Eddie Generous. And they are in the upcoming anthology, Chrome Girls Press anthology, called Stories We Tell After Midnight Volume 2, and Rachel Brune is the publisher. I believe that it is coming out October the 1st. Is that right, y'all?
That sounds right. Yeah, I think it's available for pre-order right now.
Yeah, I just saw that she had posted that, so that's pretty cool. So I got it pre-ordered and ready to rock and roll. So at the end of the last hour, everybody tuning in, thanks a lot. I don't know what's going on with the edit computer, so the announcements and stuff like that, I just have to do them by manually this time. But we're talking today about writing and publishing and just general things like that. Last hour we talked about y'all's stories. Yours is called Red Rover, Larina, right?
Yeah, Red Rover, Red Rover.
And Eddie, I am sorry, I cannot remember the name of yours.
I didn't say it, actually. It was called Whisper Woods.
Whisper Woods. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So can y'all, since we're going to the second hour, can y'all just kind of give a brief overview of your story? Like your blurb version?
So Red Rover is a story about a supernatural puppy helping, loosely use that word, helping someone to understand that they have been an accomplice to some terrible things.
All right. Eddie?
And Whisper Woods is essentially kind of the story of a demon in the woods, a myth, a local myth that is not a myth. And so a boy goes missing and his grandfather tries to find him.
Very cool. Well, I've been talking about it on my show, but believe it or not, Rachel Brune is one of the authors in my first anthology coming out on Halloween called The Devil's Due. And the premise of it is, nothing is ever as it seems, and people make seedy, underhanded deals, and they never expect the devil to come back to collect. But this is like a short, it's like 13, well, I say short, but that's about 80,000 words. But there's 13 short stories in it, and they all have a devil that collects from the participant or whatever. So, but Rachel's story is in there, and it's pretty interesting. I really feel like it was a great story, and I'm excited about it. And one of the things I love about doing the show, like you brought this up, Eddie, last hour about with people supporting each other in the community and stuff like that. And Lorraine, you talked about it too. That's one of the things I enjoy with this show is being able to support my friends and what they're working on, their projects, and and I'm gonna be honest with it, like it is not always reciprocated. It is not. A lot of times people don't. How do I say it? Like you help boost the signal, and they don't do the favor in return. Rachel is not one of those people. Rachel's really good about community. And that's one of the reasons why I love supporting what she's doing, not just because I was published with her first anthology. That was really special too. But, she's a good community citizen. And actually, I'll be honest with it, when she interviewed me, and then she asked me if I'd be interested in being part of the first anthology, I kind of reverse interviewed her, but not like an interview hardcore thing. But the thing that got me with her, that I decided I wanted to write and publish a story with her, was that she said that she really wants to be a good community citizen in the writing community, and that she does her best to do that. And I was like, yeah, that's the kind of people, she's the kind of person that I like to be associated with, because there's a lot of folks out there that just I've experienced this myself, but you see a lot of people that they're just in it for them, and I get that, I get that, but I appreciate folks who are more of the give and take instead of the just take. And really in the indie community, if we don't work together, like you said, Larina, I believe you said this last hour. Correct me if I'm wrong. Eddie, if you said it, let me know. But you said that if your story is published with a better recognized name or a more recognizable name, your story is also going to get more exposure. So I believe that's true because most indie authors, most indie publishers, they've got their small following. But if you were to just say, hey, Adam Messer, well, nobody's going to recognize that compared to saying Stephen King. And the folks that are just kind of like a drop and run, they don't really participate in the marketing or advertising stuff. I think you also talked about that, Larina, last hour too. And I've talked about this on the show before, but it takes, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same thing with any kind of book. It's like everybody that's involved, it's like, hey, let's have all hands on deck here and try to look at the success of that book. And one of the reasons why I have continued to try to help Rachel, with doing interviews and things like that, is because I believe in what she's doing. I feel like she's putting in the work, and that, she's not just putting in the work herself, but she's also trying to, associate herself with people like you, both of y'all. Okay. So I feel like that is one of the most important things, as an indie publisher, is that community and building that community. Because I don't have unlimited marketing or budget to pay authors. Everything I've, like with the upcoming anthology, I've done it all out of my own pocket, but I believe in what I'm doing and I'm investing, that money into it. So
that's one of the great things about being part of an anthology too, right? It's like now I'm part of this anthology, and by marketing myself, I'm marketing like all these other writers, and you get the reverse follows on Twitter and all those kinds of things. So not just as a reader with the anthologies, as a reader I love anthologies because there's so much diversity in them, and I can see so many different kinds of writers, and often will stumble upon a writer that I didn't know I would really like. But as a writer, I think anthologies are where it's at. And if you've got people who are in an anthology who aren't willing to market everybody else, that's kind of an imbalance. It's like the group project in school where you're pulling all the work.
What do you think, Eddie?
Well, I think most times nobody helps that much. Like there's always a few people that do lots to help a book. I did this book in 2017 called Hardened Hearts, and I think I had 16 different authors, and it was pretty much, as far as marketing went, there was about 3 of us that bothered to do anything. Now, there's some people, like you say, you get a big name person in the story, and kind of or in the anthology, and it's kind of like their name is a bit like the marketing on its own.
Yeah, it's a reader magnet. It draws somebody in to say, oh, so-and-so's in that? Okay.
Yeah. However, if they did a little effort, it would be, magnified tenfold, but they don't usually. So sometimes I've worked with some big name authors who do a lot, like Stephen Graham Jones. I bought stories from him before.
Oh, okay. Wow.
You pay the extra, you get the amazing story, and then he also tweets the hell out of it. So it's all good with some guys.
Yeah, funny that you should say that, because on the show I've had some like best-selling authors, like world-renowned authors, New York Times best-selling authors, and I've had some other kind of famous people on the show. It's been pretty cool, and it's a mixed bag. if I get like a retweet, I'm like happy. Or if I get them even saying, hey, I was on this show, I'm like, yeah. I've had some people that have not even acknowledged that they were on the show and did an hour-long interview with me. And I'm like, we spent an hour of time together. Could you at least just put it out there on your, your social media that's got 2 million followers? You think maybe 100 people might listen? I don't know. But I kind of just let that go. I'm like, I didn't go into it with the expectation that they would actually, help boost my listening. I wanted to just talk to them, but I thought, wow. I mean, like for example, if I ever had an anthology where I had Stephen King in it, I would be like, man, we got Stephen King, and then Stephen King never replies or never says anything. I would be like, what? I'm like. And it kind of breaks it down to the same thing with the anthology. It's like, didn't you get paid? Like you got paid to, for your work. I mean, aren't you proud of it, or was it just kind of like a cut and run? You're like, yeah, I sold this story. I'm done. I'm like, I'm out.
I kind of wonder if you get to a certain point as a writer, and like us as indie writers, we're like, oh, just anything to get my name out there. But maybe Stephen King is just like, my name is the marketing. I don't know. Do you get to a certain point where you don't feel like you need to do that anymore?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that it's everybody's responsibility. And I know some people have the idea that it's the publisher's responsibility to handle marketing and advertising. And that's fine. But I know for a fact from published authors in larger publishing houses that they get contract deals with no advance, and they get contract deals with no marketing monies. And they do look at your social media status. They do look at, like what your clout is and what you can bring and how many books they think you can sell based off of that. And so, if the bigger publishing houses are not paying anything up front and they're just publishing the books, obviously they're taking the risk and, and the publishing costs. So they're investing money in that, but they're also looking at it like, well, if this person can sell this many books, then they'll get a payout or whatever. As indies, small publishing houses or whatever, we're bankrolling it ourselves, and moving from one to the next. It's like, hey guys, I mean, I'm not looking just for somebody who wants to, sell me a story and move on. I'm looking for the same kind of thing. Like, hey, what can you do to help, build this, So I think it's interesting, but you got some people that they're kind of into it, and they're all posting and sharing and all that stuff. And then you got some people that they really don't do social media. So
yeah, I think social media has changed marketing so much, and a lot of people don't really like. I teach a social media for writers course through All Writers Workshop, and a lot of times I have writers who they really just don't understand, like, which tools should I be using at what time, and how do I manage to still write, because social media is so time consuming.
Oh yeah.
And I run into that too. I was just this morning telling my husband, like, I need you to, if you see me on Facebook today, you just like shut off my computer, whatever it takes, because I have things to do. So I understand that.
And it's pretty early your time still, isn't it? It was like 12, I think, when we started talking with you on your time, right?
Yeah, it's 1:15 over here right now.
Yeah.
So
how about you, Eddie? How do you, like, with your publishing of the magazine, obviously you've been doing it for what, 3 or 4 years now? And yeah. I mean, how do you roll from one issue to the next? I know you said that you're republishing like a feature on Stephen King again, and that was like one of your best sellers. How do you decide, with that? Because you said you had like 700 or 800 submissions, and you published like 4 stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really take into account their social media presence, because enough authors, and this is like a huge portion, like more than half, think their duty is they wrote the story and that's where it ends. They're like, I'm the author, I write the books, you should have a marketing team, as if like capitalism is in favor of the small press.
I love that. Can you say that again, Eddie? I love that.
Oh, I don't.
As if capitalism is in favor of the small press. Dash
As if,
Eddie
yeah.
Generous. I'm going to quote that. I love that.
Yeah. Well,
That's the truth, though. That's why
yeah.
I love it, because that is so true.
Well, in the end, I just pick whatever I like, and sometimes I pick. You know what I will do is if an author has been retweeting me and sharing unnerving stuff for forever, like months and months and months, and I know they read stuff I publish, what I will do that I won't do with other authors is give them a chance at a rewrite. Is I'll say, I like this, but the direction you took it at this point I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
So if you care to take it in a more horrific or, nastier direction, usually that's what it is. It's like, can you make this nastier? Then I give them a chance to rewrite it. If they don't want to do it, that's fine. Send me something else. I don't care.
Speaking of that,
how it goes.
I love that you brought that up, because when I submitted my story to Rachel, I had not a happy ending, but I had like a suspense style ending, and she wanted, like a horror ending. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second. I'm back. Sorry about that. Bill Cooper is in the house, and for some reason the door thing's not working. It's like, what is going on here? We're gonna have to send a message over to the admin team here. They need to do some work around here. But yeah, when I was working with Rachel on that, she told me that she was like, I'm looking for a horror ending. Thank you very much, sir. Oh, good. And I had to redo the whole last chapter. I just scrapped the first ending, and I just rewrote a new chapter, and there were some different content edits throughout the thing that she was like, hey, what do you think about this? And she gave me like the leeway or whatever, saying, hey, it's really your call, but I would like to see this, or I would like to see that, or whatever. And I followed. I mean, like, I think 99% of all the edits that she suggested, I was like, yeah. I think there might have been like one or two minor things that I was like, I'm not, same, on that or whatever. She was cool with it. But I like what you said there. Like, if they're, I kind of talking about this reciprocating thing. Like, if they're, retweeting your stuff for Unnerving Magazine, or if they're showing some kind of interest, in it, that you give them an opportunity to do a rewrite if it's not a good fit. What's kind of the idea behind that?
Well, it's that, they've been supportive, because honestly, of the, say I get 750, 400 of those stories I know I don't want within the first paragraph.
Yeah.
So what I do is, they've given me a bunch of time, to, of their own time helping market and being, cool with everything. I'll give a little extra time to see where the story's going. That's essentially all it is. It's like, it's a scratch my back, I'll scratch your back a little. It's not like a guarantee or anything.
Yeah. Obviously.
I do have enough friendly people that are not good writers that send me stuff, and I just have to be like, hey, that one didn't work for me.
Yeah. That's a good way to look at it. Real quick, everybody, you're tuning into WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul, and this is the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and today we are talking with Larina Warnock and Eddie Generous, and we're talking about their upcoming stories in the Chrome Girls Press anthology, Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 2. publisher Rachel Brune, who will actually be on the show in 2 weeks again. She's been on the show quite a few times, and I'm pretty excited about having her back on. And kind of going back to that supporting each other, and I know we've been talking a lot about author community, and we've been talking a lot about writing and that kind of thing, and kind of to me it goes back to the audience, right? Like everything we do, if we're writing and we're publishing it and we're putting it out there to the public, we are looking at the audience. We're looking at our community. We're looking at like folks like us who are reading just like us, and what they would do. So can y'all talk about how you approach that? Larina, would you start off with it?
Yeah, so I think sometimes I struggle a little bit with the line between writing for myself, writing what I want to write, writing what my vision is, and recognizing that my perspective is a little bit different than the traditional perspective. And so sometimes I have to think about, is the audience, like the bulk of the audience, not this small group of the audience, going to really understand what I'm getting at? Or do I need to make some changes so it's a little bit more universal? And I think I approach that now just as like, who am I really writing this for, and what is the purpose? So, I write a lot of poetry that no one will ever see because it's just for me. And I don't spend a ton of time on revisions or editing. When I'm writing fiction, then I think a little bit more about the audience, and a little bit more about what the audience is going to not necessarily want, but at least understand. Because there's a difference between like, I want the end of Lord of the Rings to be different, and I understand what happened at the end of Lord of the Rings. Those are two very different things. And sometimes I think we get tied up in one or the other, and are missing just that the point of a story is to touch people and to make them think about things. The stories that we remember are the stories that either like make us laugh or really make us think about something in a new way. So if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job as a writer.
Yeah, speaking of a laugh, I've got a good one for y'all. This happened just recently to me. I was in a group conversation. This is just a little joke, but it was a true story. I was in a group conversation, and this person to my left said, "It smells like desperation in here." And I said to them, well, you're wearing a mask, so you're smelling your own breath.
That's how I feel every day.
But I'm bumping. I was like, I don't know. I thought it was funny. I think we lost Eddie. You there, Eddie?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. I guess it fell flat for Eddie. See, that's the audience. It's like Larina laughed, you didn't. Some things are for some folks, some things aren't. So
I'm smiling. Don't worry.
Oh, that's the polite Canadian again. He's like, I just want to chuckle. My Canadian friends, they've got such good manners. So, how about you, Eddie? You talked a lot with the magazine and the, like, for example, the novella series that you've got with the misunderstood teenage youth stories or whatever. What do you look for as far as, how do you think about and feel and explore that with the audience and all?
I don't know. I do a lot less like front of the brain thinking than is easily explained. If I read something and it clicks in one of the places that these things that have at the back of my head, then it's like, okay, that works. And if it's my writing, I don't think about where it's going to go until afterwards. Sometimes I do self-edit a bit for content in a way that is like, okay, this is too over-sexualized or too violent, or to whatever, and I scale it back if I'm sending it to a spot that I know that isn't typically what they publish. However, if you can manage to get your writing up to the standard of them, the very biggest literary magazines that pay, $50 a page or whatever, they usually would rather you didn't tone anything down. But you have to. That's a bit of a leap from what the kind of anthologies we've been talking about to like the New Yorker or Plowshares or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I try not to. I write. I totally write for market sometimes. All the Severed Press books I ever wrote, they're totally just as much fun as I can have writing giant monster books, as long as I can keep the storyline moving forward and suspenseful. I try to write what I know what they want. I sometimes falter because it is such an American audience that my Canadianisms kind of trigger a negative response in some people. Like we simply have a different view of guns up here, that when I write about a person with a gun, it's if you saw somebody with a handgun here, the police would have already been called 10 times before by every neighbor on the block.
Man, so, we eat our McDonald's with handguns on our sides here. I'm just kidding, man.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, man. Hold that thought. I got to do the little announcements, y'all. We're doing things a little differently today because the recording thing is not working, and I'm gonna have to send it over to the admin team. But talking about the United Way, we all know that these blah 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 blah. Let me try again. We all know that these are trying times for all of us, but there are quite a few of our friends and neighbors who have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic and business closures. And that's where the United Way of the Coastal Empire has been very helpful offering support. But they can't do it alone. The United Way of the Coastal Empire needs your help now more than ever so they can feed, shelter, and provide other necessities to those who need it most. If you donate, you will know that every dollar will go to helping your neighbors and their families. More information about the United Way of the Coastal Empire and making a donation can be found at uwce.org, uwce.org. Red Cross. Disasters don't stop even during a pandemic. The Red Cross is there to help when disasters strike. They respond to a disaster every 8 minutes. They help people to prepare for disasters, and they help prevent disasters such as home fires. The Red Cross saves lives by providing blood. And now, free COVID-19 antibody testing is available when donating blood with the Red Cross. More information about the Red Cross services and donating blood can be found at www.redcross.org. www.redcross.org. And then sea turtle safety. Did you know that holes left behind on the beach are hazardous for baby sea turtles as they make their way to the ocean? Baby sea turtles are protected by filling. I keep wanting to say filing. Sorry, y'all. By filling in the holes that you or others dig on the beach. More information and hashtag Sea Turtle Safety stickers can be found at www.seaturtlesafety.org. www.seaturtlesafety.org. Okay, so this is the Adam Messer Show, y'all, and you are listening today on WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So yeah, back to that, Eddie, with guns. So when you're writing it, when you say your Canadianism, am I saying that correctly? That when you've written, can you give an example of a way that you've written something about, somebody holding a gun or having a gun or whatever that you're talking about with it?
Well, I have this one book called RAR, and it's about a prehistoric bear that gets kind of stumbles into a time warp during an earthquake and winds up in modern-day British Columbia.
Was there a fire tornado as well?
No. But,
Because, like, you know, not to be funny, but I actually saw a video of a fire tornado the other day, and like when you're talking about all these things like together, I'm like, you know, you ever heard of Sharknado?
Those fire tornadoes are pretty terrifying.
Yeah, that's what your story thing kind of reminds me of. You're like, this prehistoric bear stumbles into a time warp, and I'm like, dang.
Well, that's how the giant. So this giant bear is in Canada, and I had this one reviewer go on this huge thing about Democrats and Republicans, and and I'm like, you don't respond to reviews, so I didn't do it. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, we don't have those up here. We don't have those. We are in a two-party system. So he was mad about that I made most of the hunters who went out. It's essentially, I don't know. It's essentially like Jaws. Remember in Jaws when all the fishing boats went out,
Mm-hmm.
and the people were drinking, and they're sinking their boats. So I essentially wrote this scene where you have a whole bunch of hunters, but they're not the good hunters. Like, I didn't specifically say hunters are bad, but I didn't focus on the good hunters that might have been out there, because they're not like funny or entertaining. They don't do anything rash. So this guy was very upset about that, but he went into all of these American laws and stuff in the thing, and I'm like,
On the review?
it's
Really?
a very long review. If you go, it's on Amazon for my book Rar. But
And then he's writing this political review about a fantasy novel.
well, it's essentially just a comedic horror.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it's based in Canada, and it says Canada all through it. So I don't know. Some people
Did you have the Canadian flag like on the cover? Because that would have been pretty epic too.
It was published by a company out of Tasmania, which is right next to Australia. So I didn't have any say in the cover, really.
I like those over the top kind of cheesy style, 80s style, horror stuff. I love that kind of stuff. Like, I really do. I think it's so much fun because it's like, kind of like the Sharknado thing, like that's what, when you're talking about this novel, I'm like, what? Just mindless fun action / horror comedy. I like that kind of stuff. Like Shaun of the Dead. I love that kind of, storytelling. It's just mindless disconnect entertainment for me. It's like, but yeah, it's kind of crazy that you'd have a reviewer do that. Larina, what's the craziest review you've ever had?
Yeah, I think I only ever had like one review at all because I don't have a published novel. And so with my story that was in Space and Time magazine, somebody posted like, it was a good review of the story and like 4 sentences about, we follow this guy and find out that he had other things in mind, and it was completely not helpful to a potential reader.
Spoilers. Drops a bunch of spoilers.
And there were no spoilers, but there was also no I liked it, I didn't like it. There was no kind of commentary on what happened. It was just really, really interesting, and I thought, why did somebody take the time to write this? And I'm a big fan of like all publicity is good publicity. I'm a marketing teacher, so I like to write reviews, and it's funny how people think that reviews are a place for those kinds of conversations, and that the Second Amendment.
Oh, so it was something that was yours the same kind of thing where it was something like completely not related?
Yeah, it was just like not related at all to the story. But
like, hi, my name's Bob, and I'm a potato farmer.
Yeah, like there's a carrot in the story, and I like carrots.
Yeah.
It was really just really, really interesting what people will write in reviews. I love to read other people's reviews.
I had a person
Yeah.
leave a review where it was pretty much like a summary of the entire short, the entire story. And I was like, dude, this is, review's not supposed to be like a summary of, the story.
Right.
You're giving, I mean, like, the whole point of reading is to, to get the, to get the fun for yourself,
Yeah, I like the little check mark box that you can put on Goodreads that says, my review has spoilers.
Yeah.
And you can check mark it so people can just, if you guys can hear my dogs howling, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. Let them howl. Well, this is community radio. This is real life, everybody. You want to know what it's like to be a writer? This is it.
Yeah, this is it. My neighbors are getting out of their car, and the dogs haven't figured out that it's a public street yet. So
Yeah.
it's
What?
it's just interesting, like what people will put in reviews.
Well, yeah. That's kind of, it makes me think, like, as you're going through, like, Eddie, you've had a bunch of like submissions, and Larina, you've read a bunch of submissions and whatever. Can you give an example of like nothing like explicit, okay? First of all, but can you give an example of like just one of the strangest ones that you've ever heard of or thought of or seen?
Like a submission
Yeah.
that has come to us.
Yeah, just something kind of like really out there that like comes to mind.
I'm gonna have to think about that for a minute.
I had a guy respond after I rejected it, offering me cocaine and heroin if I changed my mind.
What?
Sure,
What?
Sure he was trying to be funny or whatever, but it's like,
You're like, sir, the FBI is now monitoring all of our communications.
Right? Yeah.
And I'm in
Wow.
Canada. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's crazy.
Yeah, that people sometimes respond to rejections in really bad ways. That's and sometimes it's funny, but usually not.
What's that,
you
Eddie?
shouldn't respond ever. Do not respond to rejection.
Yeah, it's just a bad strategy. It's a quick way to get on an editor's like block this email list.
Now, see, I wonder if it's like, if you send a rejection to somebody and then they reply back, I appreciate you reviewing it. Thank you for your time. You don't even suggest that? Because that would seem like professional communication.
Yeah, I mean, it's professional communication, but when you're dealing with like 700 submissions, if everybody did that, it just clogs up the email, so you can't find the future submissions. So it's actually making it harder for the editor to do their job.
You guys don't have a separate email just for your Go files or the hot files?
Well, yeah, but all correspondence to the journal goes to that.
I gotcha.
And it's all time. There's only so much time, and it's just better if if it's a very encouraging rejection, maybe. But I would say if you feel the need to respond to a rejection, do it in your next submission to that magazine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, just because then it's not clogging anything up, and you can just add it in one extra sentence, like, I really appreciate your encouraging rejection last time. Here's a new story.
Okay.
That way there's not like, it is totally frustrating to get a whole bunch of emails that you don't actually have to act upon, but you have to open.
Yeah.
I said I'm the opposite. I appreciate professional communication with people, and I can see where you're coming from though. It's a time sink. I had with the anthology, I opened up like 2 slots for like open submissions, and there were several people that submitted things that were not even based off of the premise at all, like just completely not based off the premise, and The way I did it was I asked them to send me a 75-word pitch, and then if I liked their pitch, I asked them for a 500-word treatment, and then from there we talked more about whatever. But I had a couple people that it was just they they didn't read the submission guidelines at all, which I know is a big problem out there. But I could see, like if you're dealing with 800 submissions, on a given thing, and then you're doing that times 4 a year, it could be very tedious, especially, if it's you doing like pretty much 99% of the, all the heavy lifting. But yeah, that is a good, I think that would be a good practice though, to say, the next time saying, thank you for your encouraging words on, the last submission that I had or whatever. I think that's pretty cool. Everybody, you're tuning in today. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. This is WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And today, my special guests are Larina Warnock and Eddie Generous, and we are talking about writing and all kinds of stuff. And, Chrome Girls Press has an upcoming anthology. Excuse me, y'all. Got a little bit of indigestion there. It's crazy. But we have a discussion today about that. Chrome Girls Press, Stories We Tell After Midnight, Volume 2. It's coming out, I believe, October the 1st. And publisher Rachel Brune, she's been on the show before. She's going to be back in like 2 weeks, so I'm pretty excited about that. But we've just been kind of talking about the nuts and bolts of publishing and that kind of thing. See, I'm a new publisher. Like this anthology that I'm putting out, The Devil's Due, this is going to be the first one that I'm publishing outside of my own indie publishing. So I have 13 authors. I have an assistant editor that was part of it. I've actually, one of the authors and we have a little film company that we do called Dead Pixel Pictures, and we've actually got a short film based off of the premise that we're in the final rounds of editing for it. You know how some places or some people do book trailers or whatever. I love horror movies too, and I wanted to do something like that. So we have a short horror film coming out, and it's been a lot of fun, and I've been learning a lot. I know we've been talking about marketing and advertising and that kind of stuff. I feel like it goes, like when I talked about the human condition earlier, I feel like, it goes back to the relationships, and it goes back to the human condition. It goes back to the storytelling, because I've seen books, people talk about you shouldn't judge a book by a cover, but that's total nonsense. I mean, people look at the covers first, but I've seen some books that, they're very popular because of word of mouth. Word of mouth. I mean, I feel like that does more for anything than advertising. But it's a mixed bag because there's so much stuff being published. Like, I heard a statistic that Amazon's putting out like 7,500 new books a day. They have millions of different books out there. Eddie, you've got, a magazine out there, magazines there, there are a lot of magazines out there, but how many magazines, are in that same genre? And then out of that, it's like how many people would subscribe to a magazine or read that magazine or whatever. And, it's just building, I feel like it's building that relationship, and people are going to come back, if it's good, if they enjoy it and they're like, oh yeah, I like that last one, let me check out the next one. I mean, I believe, Eddie, you said earlier that the reason why you submitted with Rachel was because you had read the first one, right? So, I feel like it kind of all connects and it tumbles in together. I mean, like there's no answer. I mean, I'm definitely not a best-selling author, and I'm just talking from my own personal experience. But the people that I see that are successful, some of them spend a lot of money on Amazon marketing and advertising. I mean, like thousands of dollars a month to get that return. And then I've seen other people where they've spent $0. And, their book just blows up because, it's gotten that clout and that word of mouth, It all comes back to the storytelling, though, I feel like.
Some of it is just plain luck, too, right? Like J.K. Rowling, the first Harry Potter book, like Roseanne Barr had her talk show, and she was reading it to her kid at the time and mentioned it, and it just exploded in sales.
Yeah,
some of it's just luck.
Same thing kind of happened with Paulo Coelho with The Alchemist.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey. I think maybe it was Bill Clinton at the time, but I think it was Oprah as well. That they were seen with a copy of it and like in a picture or something like that, and it had been out for like 10 years. I mean, like in that, The Alchemist is like a great book, but if you read the forward of that, he talks about the first time it was published, it only sold 2 copies within the first 6 months, and he said it was to the same guy that had lost the first copy. So it's just kind of crazy. I feel like there is a lot of luck involved too. One of the things I like, I'm gonna be honest with that. One of the things I like about the community part that we've been talking about is introductions and like saying like, okay, for instance, I had talked to Rachel about lining up some interviews for the anthology coming out for the stories we tell after midnight, and so she introduced me to y'all, and here you are, and we're talking on the radio. That me meeting Rachel was from my friend Bobby. Me meeting Bobby was from my friend Randy. It wasn't just random. It was just like, folks are like, hey, you should meet this person. You should meet that person, so and so. And I like that, where it's like, you got something going on and you're working on something, and you got there. People are going to try to help you. It's just it's a natural part of the human condition. I'm saying, hey, like, hey, Eddie, I know you do this magazine, blah 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 blah, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So I feel like Rachel does a really good job of doing that as well, and I try to do the same thing. I try to be a good community member as well of the writing community. So I feel like y'all, I mean, like, you seem like the same kind of folks. So
Yeah, I think, I tell my students when I'm teaching them about like jobs, like networking is how most people get their jobs. And I think that that's also true in any kind of artistic world where, most people aren't involved in this kind of indie artist world. And so you want to have that community with other people who are.
Right.
yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. What do you feel like when being a participant in the community, what are some things that people can do? So there's a lot of new writers out there, right? What are some of the things that they can do to become involved? I'll start with this one. Joining a writers group or a writers forum or a Facebook group. Read the FAQs and then use the search bar, because I see people asking a lot of the relevant questions. They are good questions, but they're the same questions that get asked over and over again that could have been answered with a quick search or reading the FAQ.
Yeah, I think that's really, really big. And in the same vein, when you're looking at submissions, like make sure that you're reading those submission guidelines really closely.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because sometimes people do just send stuff that's just not right for it, and sometimes that's hard to tell. It's kind of hard to like, I think maybe this might fit, and those borderline stories, for sure send, but sometimes you can just look at it and go, oh, this is about time travel, and my story's not about time travel, so maybe I'll submit somewhere else.
Well, yeah. So I was talking about that earlier with the having people submit, and it was nowhere near the premise. I said that the premise for The Devil's Due was it had to be a deal gone wrong, and the devil comes back to collect. And the devil could be anything. We've got some that are fairies, we got some that are people, we got some that are demons, we got some that are vampires. It could be anything.
Yeah.
And I had a couple people that they submitted, and it was like, first of all, there's no deal. This story is not about like a deal gone wrong. There is no devil per se. It's like I was like, what are you thinking? I didn't say that to them, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. Like when you're talking about, Eddie, about just a time sync with an email. I was like, why did you even send me this?
Well,
Yeah, I think getting involved with writers groups too. Go to writing workshops. And right now is a great time to be a writer because so many conferences are virtual. And so I've been able to attend some that I would never have been able to attend because of cost or travel. You know, I'd have to take time off work, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But ask questions, but listen a lot. When you're a new writer, you've got to listen. You have to know the rules before you can break them. And I find a lot of new writers want to get in and start talking about their own work, but they need to be listening too.
What were you going to say, Eddie?
That's hugely important. That's almost right along the lines. I was going to say patience is something that new writers have to learn, and they have to acknowledge the fact that the people who have been around have been doing the exact same thing that the new writer thinks is so important for years. They have to acknowledge that they just haven't put in the same amount of work, and they don't get to have the same seat at the table right away. It's a big part of it. People don't seem to realize they jump in, they come out and they're like, hey, I've seen this in this exact scenario multiple times, but an author comes up and he's like, hey, I'm a new author. Here's my website and my brand and the synopsis of my future 10-book series, and they haven't written anything yet. And it's just like, why aren't you guys subscribing to my newsletter and all this? And it's just like, you gotta do the work first. And
I think it happens too, Eddie, as well in the workforce. Like I've seen, you know, I don't want to knock anybody or any generation, but I've seen folks coming into the workforce with hardly any experience or no experience and expect to be moved up right away. And I think that there's a big disconnect with the expectations there, you know?
Right.
Y'all, where, real quick, before we wrap up the show, where can people check out your information and your websites?
Mine's super easy, as long as you can figure out how to spell Larina, which is not, I guess now that I think about it, not super easy, but larinawarnock.net. I'm on Facebook.
And that's spelled Larina, y'all.
Yeah.
Larina.
And I am the Doc Knock on Twitter and Instagram. I'm kind of all over the place.
Nice. Eddie?
I can be found at my personal website is jiffypopandhorror.com. I have I have a Canadian focused books podcast I just started called Books North, and that's at booksnorthpodcast.com. The unnerving stuff is at unnervingbooks.com, and then at unnervingbooks on Twitter, and then my personal Twitter handle is at generoused.
Nice. And today, folks, we have been listening, or you've been listening to us talking about Chrome Girls Press and publishing and stuff like that. You can find out more information about Chrome Girls Press at cronegirlspress.com. And the new anthology is called Stories We Tell After Midnight. It's volume 2, so there's 2 of them out there. And then she also has the Coppice and Break anthology out there. I'm one of the CGP authors, as well as Larina and Eddie. So shout out to Rachel. Woo woo. All right, y'all. So we got like a few minutes left. I'm actually going to start